Countdown. Hey everybody, good morning. Timo, Thomas Morgan here with Magenta from Bloom Network. This is going to kick off about a 2.5 hour Basin Live session with a series of guests. We have 5 different people scheduled. It is an open Q&A, so you can drop your Q&A in the questions there. We'll answer them, or if you're on Riverside app on your desktop or laptop, you can actually do a call-in. There's a little call-in button, and we'll bring you up on stage on camera, and you can ask your question to any of the guests. But just bear with me. Magenta, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I'm going to go ahead and start the live streaming on LinkedIn, but go ahead and tell us about Bloom Network and welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Cool. Yeah, my pleasure. It's really nice to connect with you. So my name is Magenta. I am based in New Hampshire, kind of near Boston. And I've been working on Bloom Network since the end of 2010. I was initially a local organizer in the Bay Area, connecting technology groups with ecological groups, with social justice and new economy folks. Because in the Bay Area, they're like very segregated, these movements, and they have a lot to share with each other. And then I came across what is now called Bloom Network, which is a global community of people doing that. So they're hosting events that work on local food security and building regional food systems. They build local. We've been experimenting with alternative economies since probably about 2009, and so we've kind of, refi is a really good solution for our international community. And then online we have a social network, so we're like a cyber physical social network, right? There's I think 24 local hubs around the world right now, and then and I think about 10 different countries. And then online we share resources. It's a full-on social network platform, so it's kind of a media feed, and then each local Bloom has their own local media feed. So it's all oriented around helping people find these projects that are happening on like everywhere that are just like invisible from mainstream media, so that people can find them and participate, and we can like as quickly as possible adapt to what's coming and repair our local climates, our local watersheds, and make healthier social relationships where we live.
Cool. I love global starts local, right? If we can change it place by place by place, and to me, Bloom with your local groups in organizing locally first, right? You're a global organization, but you have like pods or nodes or polycentric. So if you could just expand on how you settled on that kind of local node network.
Well, we initially emerged from an online network with a different like parent company, and people were so excited to connect each other online about like the intersections of these things I just described. Some of the impetus was like Occupy and and other transcendental experiences like through meditation and stuff, where we were like seeing vision space, like how things were possible, and we were all seeing the news and like breakdowns and knowing this would be worse. And so we're like, hey, why don't we start local hubs and skill share each other up and like do this in person and build this vision that we're all seeing, that we know is like needed to navigate what's coming down the pipeline. So it was always peer-to-peer effort from there, and just kind of like the former corporate structure was like really in the way of us organizing peer-to-peer, and we eventually like seeded all together from that. And they had already taken the social network down because they like didn't understand what was happening on the grid and the value of it. And so we organized together, and so it's really a federated co-op is what we're building out of the Colorado Limited Cooperative Association, and that allows each local Bloom hub and individual members of that to collectively own the platform and the infrastructure and economic model, so that all work feedback into people generative action on the ground instead of like lining executive pockets. So the incentives are for local regeneration, like pull you off your screen and like do stuff with your neighbors, to feel great, to repair your the plants and animals around you and your own bodies and relationships. And it's just like such a beautiful effort. I can't believe how beautiful and collaborative and wonderful it continues to blow my mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack there in the cooperative model that you spoke about in the Colorado LCA statute. Maybe a good spot to start before we get into the technical details of the cooperative law and the cooperative model would just be a couple of examples of local blooms and how they're organizing and what they're doing. Like, a lot of this, we're here for the Gitcoin Climate Round, and there's this kind of stigma around blockchain and Web3 and crypto and whatnot. That's bad, right? Negative, bad. But like here you are creating a blockchain enabled Web3 ground up distributed ownership model using these tools, affecting change on the ground. So give us some examples of connect those two, please.
Yeah. So one of the local blooms is in Costa Rica. They're in a place called Diamante Valley. And so they're sort of like a distributed community, and that's most common, like whether it's in a city or a rural place. So they plant agroforestry gardens for food sovereignty, and some of the blooms around the world also plant export crops interspersed with that. So they're rebuilding their soil health and the ability for the soil to absorb water, which is like reducing flood risk. Repairing local microclimates, like you can take measurements of the air and just it affects rain cycles. Like that's really like the place to intervene, really. And so yeah, but agroforestry gardens are really helpful, and a lot of blooms do them because it's like food and economic and justice and climate like all interspersed. And then they also do like local recycling of all their trash. They process it and recycle it and make it into other objects or break down the cardboard. They also plant like water filters, like filtration systems, like gray water. So when you have something that might be using toxic chemicals or any kind of substance that you wouldn't want to end up like directly in the waterway, which is what happens anywhere where you live. They plants and different species planted in like a bed that like slowly breaks down that stuff before it has a chance to like flow into the water. Local cooperatives, local economic systems. We're about to run a pilot with Collectivo from Curacao. Cool. Yeah, what else are local blooms doing? One of them is planting like using sunflowers in Baltimore, in a primarily Black community, and the sunflowers, they tested like different species and collaborated with the university nearby to see like which one is most effective at drawing the plant and they safely dispose of the plants. So bioremediation, common thing, local food movement building, local. It's that holistic approach is kind of like not necessarily unique, but it characterizes a lot of the local hubs.
But there's so much power in the holistic approach because like climate, right, is systemic. It's interconnected. It's everything related together. People don't want to hear this, right? They want something simple of like, it is just carbon, right? It is just income inequality. It is just biodiversity. It is just heat and global warming, but it's finance, it's policy, it's legal. It's people, it's emotions, it's all this stuff. So the holistic, right? It might sound like overused or cheesy or whatever, but like I'm 100% with you that like that's the approach that's gonna, those approaches. When you talk about water in soil, right, and rehydrating the landscape, that all goes together, as well as recycling and composting, because it's a cycle. It's not just like you do one thing and A plus B equals C. It's more like A plus B equals C, and then you add D and E, and you keep going back to hopefully better from where you started.
Yeah, the hydrological cycle is like the equation, right? It's like the transfer of gases and chemicals from the atmosphere to the soil to the water. And at some point, scientists like picked carbon because it's easiest to isolate. But as you know, it's nitrogen, like water itself, like this is it like cuts across any kind of regulatory bodies and lines, right? So it's really hard to stuff. So local grassroots ground place-based activities are we think and we see some of the most effective ways to help people like reconnect to their connection with their waterways and like listen to that again, because like with colonization,
Love that.
For so long, like European folks and where cultures have been genocided, like that connection has gotten disrupted, or people are like fighting for their lives and stuff still. Starting there, and addressing whole community is like as much of the picture of climate as pulling carbon out of that equation.
Cool. So on I've had the pleasure of you sharing your docs with me and your deck and your notes. Or we're using the same attorneys, Yev and Jackie, here in Colorado. Yeah. So we've shared, I've had a sneak peek right into some, you've sent me some stuff, but like for the audience, and for people watching at home, like what's like the regenerative finance model? Like how do people actually benefit financially if they do these activities? Have you fully settled on like tokenomics and flows of financial value?
Yeah. Let's see how to succinctly describe it. So we're using a cooperative patronage token, which is a normal thing. Like if you have a grocery store co-op, or like Cooperation Jackson or Mondragon, if you're familiar with those co-ops. So when you're contributing value to the co-op, that's recognized, and then you receive dividends at the end of the year, right? And this is an established like legal thing. It like cuts out the legal risk for these long-standing communities that if we were to get them into legal trouble, that'd be like not good. So then we just use a token for that, right? So we mint flow for flowers, FLO. We don't have that infrastructure set up, by the way. That's one of the things that we're going to fund with our Gitcoin round, to plug in more of the Web3 architecture. I've been researching like what tools to use and stuff. But anyway, so when people do regenerative actions, there's a way for them to report those on our site with like good media and storytelling. And then we'll allocate them the flow tokens for that. At the end of the year, people will receive a proportional distribution of profits, and also any protocols and grants that want to put money into that system will then filter in work on the ground. That's then also used for governance power in their local chapter. So, instead of financial power equating to governance power, it's your knowledge and experience and actual contribution to regeneration that is a signal. Implementing that like very they can together, or they like work on their farms once a week. So doing governance is not going to make sense, right? So it just like will depend and probably vary how we roll that out from group. But yeah, that financial bit with the regenerative action rewards using the patronage token is going to be the main way we fund stuff. Obviously, also use a lot of our community artists. That's going to be a no-brainer, and we'll use the worship NFT to help people on board and have token gated access to stuff. And then that allows like easy cross-border financial payments, right? So if we're gonna send, also if we were to like, once we start having more grants come through, we'll want to easily be able to distribute them to local blooms, and it's cost prohibitive or at least very lossy to do that through fiat currency. But small amounts of money to people in the Uganda chapter that are working on their local permaculture agroforestry gardens there, it's like nearly costless. And then, if they develop their own regional token economy, they can just keep the money circulating in digital currency, or if they need to transfer it out, we'll be teaching people how to. Yeah, I'll stop there.
No, I think like co-op, right, or cooperative, at least in the US, I think gets a bad rap, even though like there's common things in your community, like agricultural co-ops are pretty common around the US. Like I belong to what's called the Roaring Fork Co-op just down the road from my office, and we buy hardware store stuff and stuff for the yard and fencing stuff and softener, salt, and even they have a gas station. Unfortunately, I still put gas in my car and our truck, but I get a check back I get patronage back.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, which it like makes me support. And the people, there's a noticeable difference of the people working there. They're happier, they're more engaged, they care more about what they're doing, and there's like a pride of ownership. So if we connect Web3, right, or you use NFT, right, like to me that's the big ownership unlock. It's no different than a piece of paper or a share or a deed or a title to a car. It's just a different form of verifying that you own something or have access or utility to something. So what did you find on your journey around like co-ops? Like, did you face resistance? Did you have any personal resistance, or did you just always know you wanted Bloom to be a co-op?
Well, I think the co-op DAO model be helpful because co-ops are, my of them, bureaucratic and hard to onboard to, and I think that DAOs can in background some of that baggage with the membership and kind of the norms around collective organizing and distributed organizing. So I think that's a good kind of marrying, like co-ops and DAOs. Like I also work in Diorg, which is a software developer co-op, which is more like a worker-owned co-op. And the other like benefit of DAOs, I would say, is the ability to federate, like we are. Like the most notable example of a federated co-op. So they have a bunch. They mostly do like car part manufacturing, but also lots of education and stuff. But by sharing resources that way and education pathways and infrastructure, they're able to make the unit economics work out across everything like a little bit more smoothly. And I think DAOs will kind of just accelerate that process and make things like platform cooperatives more viable. I think it's notoriously incredibly difficult a platform co-op try to go that pathway, and there's just not a lot of people putting money into that. But once you combine that with DAOs and community ownership, you start getting more cultural patterning that there's a little bit more gravity around and a little bit less there's friction, but it's like a little bit different than co-ops somehow. So yeah, I'd say like education and onboarding is difficult for co-ops, also difficult for DAOs. Somehow putting the two together is like, I don't know, kind of at least communities that have the same challenges that solve it in different ways. So it kind of increases the pool, whereas co-ops are like incredibly niche. Like not many people have experienced one. Co-op is a big word, so are DAOs, but like somehow both of them. And the main thing is like it just cuts out the legal risk again. Like DAOs, co-ops, and nonprofits, especially if you're trying to set up an entity based in the US, they provide you like a little bit easier and cheaper legal formation pathway than it would. We're actually also having to use a C Corp. We're going to use Fairmint, but round of finance than the like cap return model that's normal with co-ops. We found that we needed to set up a subsidiary C Corp that holds like the collective's and so then we're able to raise higher amounts of funding, because I think that's the other barrier with co-ops that are is, or with Bloom it's distributed locally, but they need like higher amounts of capital than you're able to source and skill up and educate folks. Whereas like a local farm co-op, a little bit easier ask. People are just financing that. There's more gravity around financing a local than there is for these like global distributed co-op DAO hybrids need to happen stack. Like I was asking you more questions about basin DAO too, because I'm likewise like really curious how you guys are solving all of that, and really respect that you're focusing around water and a full download on everything basin DAO.
I think our approaches are similar. I mean, like we're focused on land restoration and land conservation, the two ends of the spectrum, and then using real estate fundamentals to do that. Where I think like your approach in like Collectivo and in like Barachara, Earth Regenerators is more like, I would say in the meaty middle of like regenerative economies and sustainable living and eco and green and like just the stuff, the recycling, the composting of the stuff like consumers and individuals need to do and communities to organize, where we're focused at the far end of the spectrum of like, how do we take degraded, dilapidated, contaminated pieces of property and get them into like your group, right? Or into Joe Brewer's group. Or on the flip side, how do we find the pristine, beautiful, threatened pieces of property? I use the word property because my background is real estate, and that we see real estate as a tool to do these things. But how do we conserve and do conservation finance? And then we view all of it as climate finance, nature finance. But we're finding the same thing when you mention Fairment or C Corp. I think it's going to be both, right? It's this holistic view of like, you need people on the ground, you need the crowd, you need collective action, but you also need investors, and you need finance in order for us to scale, right? I think that's where you're headed with the C Corp. For you, in order for you to scale what you're trying to do, you need investors above and beyond just the cooperative members. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Cool. And are you doing a formal fundraise separate of Gitcoin, or I'd love for you to share. Since we are talking about Gitcoin and the Gitcoin rounds, you've been in it, I think, as long as Basin has been in it, or maybe even before. Share your experience with Gitcoin and how that's been a useful tool for you and what you're doing.
Yeah, Gitcoin's been amazing. We were previously a nonprofit, and we still have the nonprofit entity, but trying to fund a whole systems thing and also the tech build of our platform through a nonprofit pathway was like impossible. Like, we're mostly anarchists, so we're lefty progressive, and we're also mostly service like very early stage projects, and it just like I don't know. I think there's like an infinite match between a lot of nonprofit and philanthropy and the local economic sovereignty that like in these whole economy are really necessary. And like cooperatives, DAOs, Gitcoin, quadratic funding, these are like much more well-fitted collaborative finance structures. It's been amazing. It's the first time we were able to get our social network built and hire a developer and start the legal formation process, which is like announcing the call to bloom and inviting more local hubs to join. Collaborative aspect of Gitcoin like incentivizes people to learn about each other's projects, build collaboration, support each other, build like working groups. That's like the opposite of philanthropy, right? Where like you never see anyone's grant. It's that take you like weeks to write. They go into the void. You maybe never hear. It's such a fucked up system, and Gitcoin is like perfect.
It's very collaborative. Like, I mean, all the different projects, like, we are collaborating and working together and trying to grow each other's communities and impact. I mean, I love the idea of quadratic funding, right? It's not about the amount of money that a donor gives. It's just about that individual vote, and the number of votes triggers the bigger funding pool. So it's super innovative, and but that one of the reasons we're doing this lives, we're streaming over at LinkedIn and streaming over at YouTube, is trying to get not out of Web3 like crypto blockchain, but like bring more people in who down the refi rabbit hole, who are curious. What have you gotten objection to Web3 blockchain, or what's been your experience with like trying to get local community people who are scared of wallets and crypto and this scammy technology? What's been your experience there?
Yet started onboarding our community, just we've been under-resourced enough. We do have a trainer in our crew, so she's been putting together a training material for how to use the wallet and that kind of stuff. So we've mostly been kind of relying on the support farther in onboarded. I'm going to try a little bit of onboarding with this round. But we've encountered zero friction or pushback from anyone in our community. The financial scarcity and the like structural mismatch with either like social impact venture approaches. It's just so clear there's like a huge gap here, and the sector which is capable of moving forward like the most quickly is completely differentiated from the financial system, which was like intentional the problem, right? And so we've had really good understanding and uptake and like eagerness and interest to onboard into this because people understand like, oh, this is set up like how we are. This makes sense. And we have like a local hub. The local hub in Costa Rica is also part of the Giveth crew, so they're probably part of experiencing it. And the up and down for them, the token approach in Giveth so far cost. Well, we had a lot of money, and then suddenly we don't have any. So we're trying to mitigate that by like leaning in lines and being very conservative and cautious with like what tokenomic systems we expose our community to.
I think at the end of the day, like stable coins, money that you can readily spend, convert, and interact, rather than every single one of us having our own currency. I mean, I think there's value definitely in like access, utility, and governance, but every single one of us having our own currency is probably it's not going to be there for some time, right? I think there's so many liquidity concerns, but I think that your conservative approach to me really resonates with kind of what I'm seeing.
Where's the best place for me to dive into more with Basin DAO and connect anyone from our community who is real estate getting involved with your network?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. We have our beta. It's just more of like an MVP. I just dropped it in the chat there, but the beta app is a little feedback. So I'm getting a little feedback. I'm not sure if someone doesn't have headphones on, but Magenta, the Basin beta app, you can go and play around what we're doing there. That's under the hood is a Polygon ERC 721 NFT contract. You can see that on OpenSea. And so everything that you're seeing on that beta is on the blockchain. It is Web3. Every single Basin token is a charged particle. So you can put any kind of value inside of it, any ERC20 token, any NFT token. We're basically building these little like permanent endowments or perpetual purpose trust for every single species or any place on planet Earth. And we can get into that later, but that's a good spot. And then we also have docs, and these need to be, these were released during the summer. And as you know, it's always like changing, super fast. So that would be a good spot. I dropped that in the chat. And then let's, you and I to get together and compare notes. And I'd love to mint some basins for your local blooms, for actual, real like restoration and conservation projects, like, real property projects on the ground that, preserve and restore habitat, add to biodiversity, catch water. Like our goal is to help groups, like, let's say you are the people group, or Seb here from Eco Labs, or Joe Brewer from Barachara as like, the people, right? We're trying to be the layer of the real estate or the land, and help separate the capital stack out of like so it's not as expensive. Like, a local Bloom doesn't have to go buy a $2 million piece of property or a $5 million piece of property. Basin would help, and through different real estate mechanisms, help separate that out. So the regenerative action can happen on the land, but then the real estate itself is just a financing tool to help all these, the greater goals that we're trying to achieve.
Looking forward to it. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming today. I did drop your grant link in the chat here on Riverside. If people are watching on LinkedIn or YouTube, over at basin.live is the actual active chat. There's more happening over here than on those two live streams. Those are just the feeds. But please support Bloom Network and Magenta and her, the cooperative work and the node-based system that they're building over there. So thanks for coming. We really appreciate it, and you're welcome to stick around and keep listening, or we'll see you on the interwebs.
Thanks so much, Timo, and yeah, I'll definitely listening to Seb. Thanks so much.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. And then we're going to give just a minute here. First, there's Sev. Welcome, Sev. How are you today?
Doing great. Am I coming in clear?
You're coming in great. Yep. Yeah. No feedback. So thanks for making it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Cool. Just before we transition to your project, I just want to encourage everyone, if you're on riverside.fm, you can drop your questions in the chat here for Sev or any of the guests. We have, including Sev, we have 4 more guests coming up, another 2 hours of this. So drop your questions. If you're on the desktop app or your browser app, you can actually do a call-in, and we'll bring you up on video, and you can ask Sev or any of the other guests a question, and you'll be on the recording as well. So if you're on the browser app, please do a call in, and it's a live show. But this Basin Live is an effort to try and bring in like more non-Web3, like crypto people, blockchain people, and show them that we're building real climate solutions, real nature projects, real carbon removal solutions, using just a new form of technology. So we're branching out to other audiences. We're trying to minimize the slang words. So if we do use a slang word, Seb, let's try and define that. And then just a quick plug that basin.live is it's been made possible by the Climate Collective, and it's brought to you by basin.global. So we appreciate that support. But welcome Sev Nightingale from Ecolabs and several other projects, which I could list them all over the place, Refi DAO and Demeter and a bunch of stuff. So let's why don't you just tell everyone what you're up to, Sev, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, and thanks for putting this on. Really appreciate you coordinating and bringing people together, and especially appreciate that last message around trying to de-jargonize the message and de-jargonize the space, and not necessarily relying on all of the Web3 terminology and trying to simplify things. So I will keep that in mind as I speak about what I'm working on and try to simplify the terms. So more or less what I have been spending a lot of time this last about a year since I've really been it was January of last year that I really started to dig into the regenerative finance space. And the one thing that I found really inspiring and that I resonated with was the collaborative spirit of the space. And so I've been doing a lot to try to support that and create and hold space for collaboration. Also kind of recognized there was a couple friction points that could use some help in coordinating how we solve those and reduce that friction. One is just on making sense of the space. How does one on board, and if they want, there's a lot of projects out here being developed on creating ways to value positive impact on the planet. And um, because they're emerging, because they're uh, innovative, and there's a lot of fragmentation, it's very confusing on exactly how to plug in and start taking action and onboarding into those ecosystems. So that's one sort of big friction point, is just simplifying that process of getting started. And then the other big one is that the way you can prove that positive impact is happening on the ground, especially when you get to small scales where you're only operating on a small farm of less than a few hectares of land. Um, Proving that you're having a positive impact in various ways can be really difficult and challenging. And the one way that can be remedied is through leveraging a lot of the new um, ways of using technology and automation to make things to start to paint a clear picture of what's happening on the ground from multiple different angles. So that could mean using a smartphone and capturing um, photos on the ground. That could mean satellite images. That could mean drones flying over the property. That could mean um, sensors that you place on site that will continuously upload data about things like soil moisture or nutrient levels, things like that. And so that's the other sort of big friction point that I'm focused on trying to solve. And essentially, a lot of collaborating with trying to put all these puzzle pieces together to try and um, try to create solutions for kind of those two broad categories of problems and challenges. And that's in a nutshell, in a big overview, what I've been focused on and working on.
Seth, there's two things that really speak to me. I saw this on your website the other day, and you just touched on it with collaboration. But one is regeneration requires collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I love that. And then our mission is to make regeneration an occupation where anyone can make a living healing our planet and restoring ecosystems as a regenerator.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's Magenta and I were just talking about kind of that the people aspect of this, and like how do you get paid to do that kind of action rather than just doing it for free, right? Like it's like
Right.
I'm a volunteer or I care about it, like, and just so I do it because I have my beliefs and values. But how do you actually earn a living, or what are these incentive structures, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That, and I try to think in systems and in incentives and in how you you know make a really significant scaled impact on sort of humanity in the world, is that you change the systems that we're operating in, and you help tweak the incentives. And if we can design incentives around the idea of regenerators, and in such a way that one can make a living, have a career, that's a career path for anyone who wants to actually just get paid to restore ecosystems and um, have a positive impact on our planet and our species, as a means of yeah of making an income. That would be a beautiful future to live in, because then if those are the incentives, then essentially that should always trend towards making some meaningful progress on some of these problems.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably a good lead into your app that you're building. How do people actually, how would they onboard, or where would they start, and
Hmm.
how do you envision that?
Yeah, so the right now we've started work finally, because essentially this past year has been a lot of making sense, a lot of starting collaborations, and not a ton of like actual development. But now we're starting a development on some of these pieces. And for the Impact app, for TIA is for shorthand. What we're starting with is just a simple survey. So starting with what are the questions that you ask people? What is the logic and sequence of questions? So that on the other end, once they've gone through that sequence of questions, they can be shown a dashboard of actions that they can take. And those actions are associated with specific projects or ecosystems that actually make sense for their situation. So both from a geographic perspective, like are these projects actually accessible to them in their location, but also from a skills and resources, like do they have access to a smartphone? Do they have access to a vehicle? What are sort of a taking stock of what they have to bring to the table, their skills, their knowledge, a general assessment of where they're at in terms of that, and then also what they're interested in, what they actually want to take part in. And by starting to refine how we gather that information, that's really the first step. And just the first version will just be a type form survey, pretty simple. But from that, we can start to iterate on the logic of those questions, and then also iterate on, okay, here's this list of actions that we can show to someone, and what are the next steps? Like we want it to we don't want to just be a list. It's actually, okay, here's step by step, and ideally direct integrations with some of these projects and ecosystems where it's a seamless flow from downloading the app into onboarding into the basing ecosystem and actually participating in some regenerative work on the ground on a project in their area, right? Where that flow is seamless. So that would be sort of the first step, is just starting with the survey, iterating on it, and I think ideally sometime later this year, looking at fall, Q4, we would have some beta app that's pretty basic to actually test. But ahead of that, it's just going to be testing using Typeform and surveys and things like that.
Yeah, like discovery mode of just
Mhm.
putting it together. Yeah. To me, it sounds like maybe bounties are not the right word, but it's like matching those skills, and then eventually there would be bounties, or whether it be jobs or hourly or some sort of crediting
It's
system.
for like if there's an ecosystem that has bounties, where they're actively putting up bounties for this type of work, and they're actively actually paying people, then we'll send them there for if they're the kind of individual that makes sense, but not necessarily incorporating bounties into the platform itself. It's really onboarding. It's just flowing people into other ecosystems. And then as we developed our own methodology for smallholder stewardship and based on agroforestry, for the folks that where that makes sense, if they have the land, if they have they're already a smallholder farmer, if that situation makes sense for them, then we can onboard them into our own methodology that's using some of these various uh, methodologies to create eco credits on Regen Network as well. So that's kind of the other piece to what we're working on.
So that's a really good transition point to. I want to talk about the methodology writing and the Regen Network. But one question, and you and I might have talked about in the past, but have you seen Field Agent? I just dropped it in the chat there.
Field Agent. Nope.
This might be just an interesting model. I feel like you could actually somehow adopt or get on their network. I mean, these are retailers that, like, if Walmart wants someone to go check like an in-cap display, or they want to check customer service, or they want to check prices, they send people all over the world basically to do little bounties. They say, okay, we want you to go do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it's like a perfect use case, like for what you're doing, right? For what Eco Labs is doing in the TIA app. Like,
right.
So I just wanted to flag that for you.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'll check that out. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I think, I mean, to me, I think like it's like bringing these two communities together. Like there's stuff already happening, like in normie world or traditional TradFi world, that we can actually just merge into or be a branch to or provide better solutions to. Because why couldn't a field agent, right, join Eco Labs and go do a task or have the skill set to do something that you're trying to do with regenerative action or restoration.
And also, I mean, you're probably taking a look at what does the flow look like for someone who wants to be a field agent and use this platform. How do they get started? How do they, what does that onboarding process look like where they're basically signing up to do random things? That's, yeah.
If you scroll down their website, like I just noticed, like the "You're in Good Company" part from Fortune 500 to Main Street USA on the homepage, like almost all those companies, right, are going to need carbon credits. Like, so why couldn't, right, like those are already like customers built in, and it's like, oh, our field agents or our customers are actually helping create the regenerative change. So
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So actually, this is a piece that's really top of mind, and that will be a big focus in the coming couple months for Ecolabs, is really taking a hard look at where the market is for these emerging ecological assets, and doing. So we received a NSF, National Science Foundation grant to do customer discovery. And from starting in February into middle of March, we'll be doing 100 customer discovery interviews. Or stakeholder discovery is another way to think of it too, because sometimes you might not be talking to people who are actually customers, but they're really relevant to gather some data information around. But what we really want to talk to and gather data around is, what is the current strategy for some of these companies around obtaining carbon credits, or what's their appetite for looking outside of just carbon practice-based eco credits. These are sort of pioneering, innovative types of assets that kind of fall into meeting sustainability goals. But what does that actually look like? And I'm curious, like, what if you have any perspective there, and something I guess like offline is would love to anyone you think we should talk to and interview during that time, would definitely appreciate you sending them our way.
yeah, I mean, what immediately comes to mind is Sisteo, Olivia's app. It's not blockchain or Web3 at this point, but she's working on originally consumer, behavior change. How do we get households to change behaviors around recycling and energy use and travel and consumption? And what she's settled on, at least the last time I spoke with her, is basically going inside corporations and getting incentives. Like the same practices actually benefit the corporation if they are more resourceful, if they waste less, if they use less energy, if they bring more money to the bottom line, just like in your household. Like, so her theory is now, instead of trying to go household to household to household, is starting in the corporations and having those same corporations on that list right there, right, of like Coca-Cola and General Mills and Walmart. So that to me leads to the question of like carbon credits, carbon projects, and local resilience. So all these big corporations have supply chains across the globe. So it's employees are people too, right? The clerk at Walmart, the manager at Walmart is a person who like we had a call, Basin had a call with Walmart before the holiday, and their employees care about the pollination and the bees, and Walmart's practice was to destroy the beehives. They considered them like pests, right, and danger, and they used to come in and exterminate. But an employee like rallied and said, "Look, like these are pollinators we need to actually support." And Walmart set up they call it the pollinator hotline. It's a 1-800 number that any Walmart customer or any Walmart employee can call, and they come in and they appropriately manage, they relocate the beehive rather than exterminate it. So I
Beautiful.
think like treating, corporations, right? Like they already are by law people, unfortunately. But treating, the people like people, right? And that they have a lot of the same hopes and goals and dreams of us outside, like regenerators and sustainability people. And so I think that would be a good place to start.
Beautiful. Thank you. What was the, could you type it in the chat, the name of that project that you mentioned at first?
Yeah, let me grab the link
Olivia
here. Susteo, yep.
Susteo.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
susteo.com, I think. Yep. Let's see. I'll put it in the chat for everyone.
Thank you.
Yep. But before I forget, let's talk about the agroforestry methodology that you were working on for Regen Network or Regen Registry.
Yeah, so we spent a few months in Barichara, Colombia, and in the end of last year. And we basically tried, we came in with the intention of wanting to scope out what a methodology could look like for small scale, smallholder farmers. And it was clear that a lot of the projects there syntropic agroforestry. But ahead of that, coming into it, we had actually wanted to think about this from the perspective of an adaptive framework. So this methodology, which is basically the process you're going through of what practices are being implemented on the ground and how are you measuring and verifying that those practices are being done. It is the current working title of the methodology, and this is still under development. It's early stages. We've just submitted a concept note to Regen Network, which is really the first sort of step. But we want to get lots of feedback and go through a peer review process on this methodology and really flesh it out in as detailed as possible, how this process and methodology would actually flow and work. But it is adaptive agroforestry. The idea being we're focusing in on the principles of agroforestry being applied, the core elements, things like the pruning of biomass and covering of soil. Is soil being covered? Is there a diversity of species? Is there a reduction in inputs like fertilizers and um, um, herbicides and pesticides, etc. Also, water use. If you're practicing agroforestry, you should actually be using less water because the soil is becoming healthier and retaining more water, right? And so, by sort of focusing in on these principles of what's being applied and trying to verify that those are being that's happening, then the species and specific practices can be adapted to the context. So to the bioregion, to the specific ecozones that project is in, um, you're still verifying that those principles are being applied, but maybe like we have the pilot projects in Colombia and Barichara, but then we're working with a gentleman who's been teaching regenerative agriculture in Zambia for the last 15 years. He's doing a small pilot project in Zambia. And then we have some pilot projects in Brazil. So as we test this methodology out in various places around the world, we can see whether or not this is kind of untested, whether or not this is possible. But instead of having this specific recipe applied, it's sort of adapting it and being able to use what I mentioned earlier in terms of sensing techniques from human sensing and satellite imagery being applied, IoT sensors being applied. So to basically verify that the practices are happening as opposed to the specific outcome. So we're not focused on how much carbon is being sequestered. We're just trying to prove, is agroforestry happening and to what extent?
And it sounds like you've taken a step further of like what's universal like applicable to any type of project, whether like
Mhm.
in the practice, and then you separate out the site specific or bioregion or eco region stuff separately,
Right.
so it can be applied locally.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, pretty much even if the species are different and the exact practices you're implementing are could be wildly different from in different areas, you're still kind of generally doing similar. You're following similar principles. You're still going to be pruning, and you're still going to be covering the soil. You're still going to be planting a large diversity of species very close together. Um, and yeah, by looking at some of those things, we should have an indication that agroforestry is actually happening.
Well, cool. Personally said, I really appreciate all your work and all your exploration and all the different projects you're involved in. What's the best way for people to onboard? In all, you have a bunch of different stuff happening right now. Like, where do you need the most help, or do you need people to fill out that form, or do the onboarding? Do you need people on the team? Like, and congratulations, by the way, on the National Science Foundation grant and the
Future Quest.
well, Future Quest, end of the year. So
Thank you. Really
way to
appreciate
go.
that. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, right now we're one of the projects in this alpha round of Gitcoin, so contributing there, which I just tried to do this morning, and hoping that went through. It was giving me an error message on the for the passport integration, but what's the latest there? Has people been able to make contributions all right for you guys, and what's going?
I see. I got stuck on the passport thing this morning. I clicked. I linked a bunch of stuff yesterday on the passport, but then there was a new thing, and it says actually, it's showing right now. It says passport score verified for me, but I have not tried any donations yet. So it says eligible for matching. So happy donating. So I'm ready, which is cool.
Cool. Yeah, but that would be the biggest thing, and yeah, we don't have our sort of MVP beta survey out just yet. Something will probably get out there in about 2 months or so, and then that'll be a big thing, is just getting as much feedback on that. But if anyone out there has any insights on regenerative work, methodology development, right now we are actively wanting to get as much feedback on our first draft of our adaptive agroforestry methodology, and get as much input on that. So that would be the call to action, is just and our Twitter is the best place. Our link tree is there, so you can find all of our Telegram group chat is going to be a place to ask questions, and website and all that. But just using the link tree will get you where you want to go.
Cool. And your agroforestry methodology is being submitted to Regen Registry, which is obviously a blockchain Web3 enabled carbon and eco credit natural capital registry. Is yours going to be outcome based or stewardship based or practice based, or what? Are going to be a kind of a combo of both?
So it's really focusing on practices, stewardship based in the beginning. The idea is to basically be gathering a lot of data around the verification of those practices, so that we can actually develop a separate methodology down the road that's outcomes based, and start to make basically the idea is it's practice based credit with claim to any future based outcomes.
Cool.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
I'd love to unpack that with you at another session. So keep adding me to those calendar invites, and that'd be fun.
Sounds great.
Cool. Well, Seb, thanks for coming. I've dropped the link up in the chat above. I'll just drop it in here again, just so people have it.
I just posted our link tree as well.
Okay, cool, awesome. But yeah, please support EcoLabs and the work that Sev is doing, and we really appreciate your time. You're welcome to stick around, but if you don't mind just changing the link going from the speaker over to Basin Live to be in the audience, and maybe you can ask Kennedy a question from the audience if you have time.
Sounds good. Will do. Thanks, Timo.
Cool.
Really appreciate you putting this up together.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Really appreciate your work.
All right. See you.
All right. While Kennedy gets ready here, just a quick, as we change guests here, just a quick reminder that if you're on riverside.fm on your web browser, you can hit the call-in button and come on live with Kennedy and I, or any of we have three guests total, including Kennedy, coming up for got another hour and a half or so. Or you can drop your questions in the chat. This is streaming on LinkedIn and YouTube. We're not really monitoring the chats over there, but you can come over to basin.live to enter the chat here. And just some housekeeping, basin.live is made possible by the Climate Collective and brought to you by basin.global. So really appreciate the support. And welcome Kennedy from Shamba. I think it's probably late there where you are.
Yeah, hi TMO, it's great to be here with you, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Kennedy is another prolific creator here in the refi, regenerative finance space, and doing some really cool stuff, primarily in Africa, but I think your project's going to be global. So why don't you give us a rundown, and I'll find your grant link here and I'll drop it in the chat, but give everyone a rundown of what you're up to and what you're hoping to achieve.
Thank you, TMO, and thanks for having me here. And just to give you a heads up, you can find our grant on the Shamba Network Twitter profile. We have it in our bio over there.
Oh, so, cool. Okay, great.
Yeah, so really great to be here. I've been looking forward to having a space to talk on basin.live. I think this is a really great platform you have going here. Super stoked for it, and I'll be a regular part of your audience. And so just to introduce myself, my name is Kennedy Nganga. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm the founder of Shamba Network, where we are building an ecological data oracle to provide Web3 with data about the environment, as well as a decentralized MRV network to provide the reporting, the monitoring, and the verification that is needed to support carbon credits. And we are a Web3 first, project. So we are developing all of these to support the Web3 paradigm, people who are trying to build, regenerative finance and carbon credits using blockchain technology. So we are really excited about, being on Gitcoin. It is where we have actually gotten the support to build to where we are right now. We started in Gitcoin GR14. And since then, we've been able to develop a host of tools that are geared towards helping people use satellite data on chain, helping people determine ecological impact on chain. And now we are moving towards supporting the carbon industry. So it's been a really great journey, and we are so grateful to the Gitcoin community for supporting us and really helping us get to this point in our roadmap. Yeah.
Cool. We had Magenta on from Bloom Network earlier before Sev, and we were talking about for Basin and for Bloom, and it sounds like for Shamba also that it's been integral to our funding, or and not just funding but community building. And do you echo that sentiment?
Yes, I truly echo that sentiment. I'd say that the powerful thing with Gitcoin is that it not only allows you to get the financial resources to develop the project, but it's also a platform to meet with and connect with so many people who are building and who are doing all very fantastic stuff. So you find people that you end up working with, people that you end up partnering with, even people to bounce ideas off and to basically refine whatever you're doing. And so I guess it's not a really old saying, but it's a saying that you come for the money and you stay for the community. And I would say that, yeah, the funding is just one of the value propositions on Gitcoin. The community is a really huge deal. And it has helped us not only to build, but also to, have some important, business relationships, because we've been able to connect with people who we are now actually providing with data to power their solutions. So it's been a really great place to connect with the whole Web3 ReFi community. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how you said that it's just money, right, or finance is just one of the value propositions of Gitcoin. There's the technology layer, there's the people layer, the networking, and the money is just kind of and I guess the memes, right? That's another another fun part of it.
Yeah, the memes. And also, when it comes to the community, I think it's also Gitcoin has evolved to become this like quarterly celebration or ceremony, which kind of like brings people together. Because it is during Gitcoin that you see all of these people reaching out to each other, having spaces, updating the world on what they've been building and where things are at. So it's become this kind of like a meeting spot. It's kind of like an online conference where people come together, people meet, people connect, and it's basically helping to build that community within ReFi. I think it's really fantastic, and yeah, we are so glad to be part of this community that is really helping to change the world. Yeah.
Cool. I love that. Like it's like a quarterly, celebration or conference for people to get together. And what also comes to mind, Kennedy, is like accountability. It's a way, like, on your grant page, one of the first things you start off of, like, what have we achieved since GR15? And that's, for Basin, we had to do the same thing. We went through like, okay, what have we actually done, right? And so you have to present that to the world and say, look, this is, and here's a project, here's a website, here's the ideas, here's the technical building that's happening in the background. So I think that's really good also, just like that accountability standpoint.
Yes. Yeah, I think the accountability is great, because you can imagine outside of Gitcoin, the only way for people to keep track of what you guys are building is either to attend town halls or be on Discord or something of the sort, or maybe read newsletters which come once a month. But not a lot of people are going to go through all of that. But Gitcoin is a time when people will actually come on, people will post about what they've been doing. So it's evolving into this really this general Web3 town hall where everybody comes together and they all share with each other. And I think, there's so much potential that can come from that. And yeah, I'm excited to see what comes from all these rounds, and especially in future, now that this new decentralized protocol has been launched. Yeah.
Cool. One of the reasons for this Basin Live format, it's streaming on LinkedIn right now, it's streaming on YouTube, is a way to like show these other communities that are maybe scared of Web3 or nervous about crypto, unsure about blockchain. Those three words are bad words. We don't, we stay away from those scammy things. Is to show those, the rest of the world, the other, people building in the climate space or nature space or data space, like you are, that like these are just tools. Right? There's nothing to be scared of over here, and it's creating real world impact, like on the ground. Like, Magenta was on, and they have 12 local blooms, and they have 30,000 people in their network. Basin has 2,000 people in their network. We have several different pilot projects we're working on, trying to implement all this stuff. It's like, how do we actually, like show the rest of the world that crypto and blockchain and Web3 is not just speculation. It's like real world, like impact. And so with that, Kennedy, I'd love for you just to, people might not know what an oracle is, or people might not know what MRV. I mean, MRV is kind of over in the climate space. People are talking about MRV and on LinkedIn and whatnot, but like DMRV, if you could just give a rundown of oracles and DMRV and how Shamba plays into that.
Thank you for that question, Timo. So maybe the first question would be what an oracle is. And basically, an oracle is this infrastructure that bridges the divide between the real world and the on-chain world. Because a lot of these applications that are running on blockchains are powered by smart contracts. They are not really able to just get information from the real world. So an oracle is what allows them to be able to connect to systems in the real world and to be able to know what conditions are like. For instance, what the weather is like somewhere, how much rain has fallen during a particular period, if there's a fire or not, a wildfire burning somewhere, what is the soil moisture or how much vegetation do we have in a particular area. These kind of measurements about the physical, the real world. This is what an ecological data oracle provides. So a smart contract that can be parametric, maybe it is designed to trigger when a particular environmental threshold has been crossed. This smart contract is able to rely on the oracle to be able to then get the data that it needs to execute. So oracles are going to play an increasing role, especially when people talk about ESG, when people talk about, like in COP27, we had about loss and damage financing, countries that are affected by natural calamities. Oracles can play a big role in helping Web3 be able to realize that paradigm, in helping Web3 to be able to build, applications that can be triggered when a particular disaster has happened somewhere. Sensors pick it up, maybe satellite sensors or otherwise, and then this information is all channeled into the smart contracts. So oracles are building that paradigm for bringing on data. And aside from oracles, we also have DMRV, because oracles are actually playing a role within DMRV as a backbone. If we think of DMRV, we are thinking of digital monitoring, reporting, and verification. It is a different paradigm from traditional MRV, which was based on a lot of manual processes. With digital MRV, the idea is to tap into digital tools, things like satellite data, things like data from IoT, from sensors, as well as a lot of models and things like machine learning and AI. Basically, things that can help us to be able to quantify and assess impact and verify impact without having to resort to traditional means of data collection. Now, an oracle is actually a very important part of that infrastructure, because it is what allows this data about the physical world to be channeled, and this verification and impact data to be sent to blockchains, where it can then be used in different applications. So when we think of ledgers such as Regen Ledger, which is an ecological impact ledger, it can be connected to an ecological oracle, such as what Shamba provides, to be able to connect that data and to be able to get it online, so that anybody who needs to find out what is happening with a particular carbon credit, they can see all the data that is involved in that particular carbon credit. Yeah.
And so when I think of Oracle, I think of like truth, or like, source of truth. Is that how you kind of view it, or do you view it more as like a connection point?
Yeah. Come again, Timo. I didn't hear you there.
Oh, when I think of Oracle, I think of like truth, right, or central source of truth. Like what's the Oracle say? But when I listen to you describe that so eloquently, I think of it as like a connection point, right? Of like, okay, there's data on site or in the field, or like with IoT or with handheld sensors, or LiDAR or whatever, and then it transfers the data, or it would you say it confirms the data? How would you say, like, or it verifies the data, or it increases the trust score of the data, or does it verify with another Oracle to make sure, like, it was 32 degrees Fahrenheit at that point, latitude and longitude, at that time? Like how does it operate with other things?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. So I always think of MRV as being these three pillars. You have monitoring, you have reporting, and you have verification. So a lot of the times, an oracle would play multiple roles depending on what it is being used for. For instance, if it is something like smart contracts that need to know how much rain has fallen in an area or how much vegetation is present in an area. That is basically monitoring and reporting. An oracle is getting information about the real world and then reporting it to a smart contract that has requested that data on chain. So that is monitoring and reporting. And then when you think about data that is being used to back a carbon credit, for instance, maybe on a ledger such as Regen, in this role, the oracle is playing the role of verification. It is basically, providing the data that can be used to verify impact and to be able to ascertain that, it is valid and a carbon credit is actually valid and that impact really happened. So I'd say, oracles cut across both M, R, and V, the monitoring, reporting, and verification. And it is in the application that you actually get to tease out what role it is playing within that bigger framework. Yeah.
Cool. I love how you broke it down using the three different parts of MRV. Why, in your write-up, and it's a word, right, that we use all the time, but decentralized, like why is decentralized important?
Yeah, that cuts really to the core of why we are doing this at Shamba. So the reason decentralized is important is because, first of all, it really changes the economics of MRV. I think for the longest time, MRV has been something that has been quite expensive, especially providing validation and verification data for carbon credits. It has been expensive because a lot of the times you have these very small centralized teams that have to maybe move into an area where they don't necessarily live. Usually they have to stay in hotels, they have to take flights. You need to have this closed group of experts going somewhere to collect that data, and all of those overheads, they definitely add up, and they tend at the end of the day to make verification quite an expensive part of the whole carbon credit cycle. So when you think of decentralization, you're thinking about how can we move from a paradigm where the verification is being done by a small group of people to a paradigm where more people can be involved, and we can even tap into local resources, local capacity to be able to collect the data that is required. And this, of course, then helps us to cut out a lot of the unnecessary overheads and costs that would go into the MRV, thereby eventually making it, more affordable and cost effective, especially when you're thinking of smaller projects that might not be able to pay the traditional MRV that is only economical at large scale. When you think of Africa and you're thinking of smallholder farmers, people can take action in smaller blocks and they might not be able to afford traditional MRV. So if we are able to build a proper, strong, and credible decentralized MRV paradigm, then we can completely change the economics of providing verification and validation, which will allow people to be able to do carbon projects and take climate action even within smaller groups. And this has the opportunity of being able to provide, or rather to allow so many people to participate. Another thing with decentralized is that it also builds transparency. Rather than having this centralized organization that is doing everything, a lot of the time it ends up being, something that is being controlled by a single entity, a small group of people. If you can have the verification and the data that is required to prove evidence of impact being collected by a wider group of people, being collected by a decentralized network, and all being put on chain, then it makes the whole process really transparent. It even makes everyone very satisfied that whatever credits are being created are actually valid, because then everybody is able to see the data that is actually collected and they're able to see all the various people that were involved in that. It basically reduces, any chances of somebody feeling like there was some internal mechanism going on that could have changed that data. So for the purposes of economics and transparency, I do believe very strongly, and also digital. When we think about DMRV, we're thinking about those digital tools because they allow a lot of automation, a lot of use of things like AI and whatnot. And I think those three things together, the digital part and, the transparency, as well as, what I've just been speaking about, all of that comes together to make the whole thing really sustainable, especially when you're thinking of the economics. Yeah.
Yes, so I love that. Cost, transparency, digital, and what resonates from the first two guests, Seb and Magenta, was it relates to economics. Is actually being able to pay people on the ground for those regenerative actions or services they're providing. How is Shamba thinking about, like, how do local people get paid? How do they participate in the Shamba Oracle and in the DMRV?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We are still building out a lot of our tech around the incentivization protocol, because we do intend to use an incentivization protocol within Shamba to be able to incentivize the people who are going to be part of the DMRV network. But initially, we'll start with probably a Web 2 application, then eventually move to a fully Web 3 application as we continue building that out. But the whole idea is to have, bounties that folks can be able to really say that, yeah, I can apply for this bounty and then I can do this work and deliver some of the results, or rather some of the data that is required by the DMRV network. So we are really thinking about using such mechanisms. I think the best part about that is that, it allows the money within the carbon credit stack. The money that goes into validation and verification is not insignificant, but at the moment it only goes to a very small group of a closed group of like a particular company. Within a decentralized paradigm, these funds that are used to pay for verification can be spread out to a wider network of people, including locals. And so it just basically again ties into that whole economic paradigm. It ties into SDGs when you're thinking about opportunities for work, or helping people to have ways to make income. So it just basically leads to more inclusion, whether you're thinking of inclusion from the terms of people participating in the actual activities that lead to those carbon credits, or financial inclusion, basically more people being able to benefit from the whole carbon credit market. And we think that, especially if you can be able to get the youth to participate in that, then it gives them extra impetus to be climate conscious and to be supportive of climate action. And I think winning the hearts and minds of people when it comes to the climate debate is one of the biggest things that we can do in trying to get climate action to a point where it can be effective. Yeah.
Cool. I have a question, but it looks like Sev has a question first. Kennedy, are you still planning on plugging Shamba into the Demeter framework? So I guess maybe we should explain what Demeter is. They'll be on, I think, next week at some point. But why don't you take that one, Kennedy?
Yes, the answer to Sev's question is definitely we are still planning to plug into the Demeter framework. I believe we already had a call where we looked at some of the data that Shamba is using, the GeoJSONs and other formats. So I do believe once Demeter has been able to put together its core infrastructure, we'll be very happy to plug in, and especially to provide data with regards to remote sensing and some of the other data that will be collected on the ground by our network. But by and large, yeah, we are totally going for that, and we will be plugging into Demeter. Yes.
Incestuous is a bad word, right? But like, I feel like a lot of the stuff we're all working on, all the different groups between Demeter and Athena and Ogallala and Basin and Shamba and Eco Labs, like, I feel like we're building some real infrastructure here, and that's what's so cool about the Gitcoin Climate Round is like you said, Kennedy, like quarter by quarter by quarter, people getting to see each other and catch up with each other and say, hey, this is how we work together over the last quarter. So I feel like there's going to be some really cool outcomes. We're going to look back on this in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows, and be like, wow, like we were building the rails. At least that's my hope. We were building the rails of climate solution and impact solution and nature finance solutions. So it's cool to watch this all play out.
Yeah, totally. I think we are building those rails. We are putting together, what in the future will become hyperstructures, and us plugging into each other and figuring out how we can all support each other from the technical point of view and from the stack point of view. That is really important. And maybe just to add some extra note about our grant TMO is that during this particular phase of Gitcoin, we're actually going to be using our grant to build the digital data that can be used for an MRV paradigm. And we'll be building this as an open data set so that anybody else who needs maybe to get the relevant land use, land cover data, or maybe soil data to assess things like soil carbon in areas where we will have mapped, they'll be able to tap into this. And this is the beginning of our campaign where we are planning to produce some geospatial-based data sets on soil carbon stocks, both above ground and below ground. And we believe this will have a lot of impact on project developers who will be taking up REFI projects in the future. Yeah.
Cool. I love that. I mean, same with like Astral or Digital Gaia, like these, or Ocean Protocol, like what these open data sets of like what people can do with them or build on top of them to create the solutions we need it's really compelling to me.
Yeah, I think this kind of open data sets are really what are going to be the next big class of public goods, because at the moment, like in Africa, a lot of the soil data is being held proprietary. So people are not really able to tap into that. Whereas this data, aside from the carbon angle, it can have so many other core benefits, especially helping farmers think about food production, helping them to manage their resources and farm fertility, and generally just helping to secure, things like food security. So this data has multiple applications. The climate angle is just one of the big benefits of it, and we are looking forward to being able to assemble it so that people can be able to tap into this resource. Yeah.
I think, and I'd like to nail in on that point of like we talked about carbon, right? And the carbon monitoring, and your grant goes through the baseline carbon monitoring that you're hoping to achieve. But like in the title of your grant is the ecological oracle, which ecology is a system. In this, you mentioned co-benefits, and there's all these other outcomes like food security and water supply and water quality and pollination and biodiversity. Do you where is like natural capital and ecological assets kind of on your roadmap? You think we're 5 years out, 2 years out, or how long do you think you're going to focus on carbon for? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think the ecosystem function approach is definitely one of the things that we are going to be following as we are doing all of this. Right now, a lot of the approach is geared towards carbon because that's like one of the most mature markets. But when we are thinking of biodiversity, water, all of these other things, soil health, all of them are going to be part of what really contributes to a functional ecosystem that is healthy. So I think a lot of these resources, a lot of these aspects also need to be measured by DMRV. In fact, they should actually be part of the core benefits that come on to make a carbon credit more valuable. That, hey, I'm selling you this carbon credit, but it's coming with all of these wonderful core benefits attached. So it gets a higher valuation. And I think right from the get-go, as we are building this, yes, the focus might be on carbon, but we have to keep in mind all the other ecosystem services and be able to assess them as we're doing MRV. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the drum that I'm always beating, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Is healthy, functioning, thriving ecosystems. It's not just about carbon removal, and it's not just about global warming. It's about actually the water cycle and species and biodiversity and human health and well-being. So like I'd love for the audience just to just dig in on ecosystem services and ecology and how all these systems fit together, because it's super important. So
yeah healthy ecosystems, they are good for everything from the carbon to the water to biodiversity. So that should be the main aim. If we just focus on carbon, then that narrow carbon, that kind of tunnel vision might end up having some consequences or effects on some of the other things that are also important. So we do believe that looking at it holistically is one of the most important things that we should be looking at as an industry. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're coming to the end of our block here. I don't see Matthew here yet, but where can people? I mean, obviously the grant link, but what help do you need? Do you need people? Do you need engineers? Do you need science? you need capital? Like where can people support Shamba?
Well, I do think maybe because we're on Gitcoin, the first way to support Shamba is backing our grant, and we do have our link. Thank you for sharing it here on the chat, Temu. We also have it for those who are following us on Twitter. We have it on our bio, and of course, on the grant page, we have a Notion link at the bottom where you can go read more about what our efforts are going to be, especially with the mapping campaign that we are launching this year. So people can be able to go there. They can be able to check out all of that data. But aside from backing our grant, we are also really trying to, get a lot of what we are already offering out there. We already have an oracle that is offering more than 60 satellite data sets, everything from weather to what is happening with soils to what is happening with vegetation and drought. So any of you guys who are thinking of building impact apps, especially things that are looking at, building things that have safety nets, maybe things like insurance. So if any of you needs any information that can be captured by satellites, feel free to reach out to us, and also feel free to share with any of your friends and builders who might be able to use such data, because it's already there and we are just helping guys to now start using it. Yeah.
Cool. And I see a bunch of subdomains. So it sounds like maybe the data is at one of those. You have refi.shamba, docs, contracts, insights. Maybe just expand on that for a minute before we introduce Matthew.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So these are the links of some of the tools that we have been building in the past year. Actually, most of these things are actually supported by Gitcoin. So we have some tools that we have built for those people who want to work with satellite imagery, but you've never really maybe been trained on that or know what tools to use. We have a full web-based tool where you just need to specify your area of interest and what data you're interested in. And we will analyze all of that data and show it to you in form of maps, graphs, and everything else. So you can be able to find the data set maybe that you would like to use to verify some data. That is under insights.shamba.app. Under contracts.shamba.app, it is a tool for developers. If you're a Web3 developer, you're working with smart contracts, but you have no idea how you can start consuming, ecological data in your smart contracts, then contracts is the tool that you want to follow, contracts.shamba.app, and you'll be able to generate boilerplate code that captures all the data that you need to be able to request data from our oracle. And then the other ones that we have there, like docs.shamba.app, that will give you all the information about the data sets available and what you can do with them. And the final link that we have there is refi.shamba.app, which is a tool that we have just rolled out to farmers so that they can be able to use it in creating carbon credits. So these are all tools that we are building. They're all for the community, and we are excited to help anybody who wants to use them. Feel free to reach out to us. We are available on Twitter, on Discord, and we are always happy to take guys through these tools that we have built through the support of the Gitcoin community. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Kennedy, keep up the great work. I love your forward-thinking ability. I love the conversation and the different groups. Same thing I mentioned to Sev. Like it seems like you or Shamba is kind of one of these like hubs, right? There's hubs and spokes of like refi and the different climate aspects, and I feel like Shamba is one of those hubs. So it's nice to see you involved in so many different projects. But thanks for being here, and everyone, please support Kennedy's project Shamba over on Gitcoin.
Thank you, Temu. Thanks, everyone, and have a nice rest of your day.
Great, thanks. And if you don't mind, Kennedy, just jumping, if you want to stay, that's great. Just go to the other link, go to basin.live, rather than this is the whatever the guest area. So we appreciate you being here, but feel free to come ask Matthew or TR Price. Ivano is going to be up next after Matthew.
Okay, cool. Bye-bye.
Cool, thanks. So Matthew, before we introduce you, real quick, we've had Magenta from Bloom Network on. We had Seb from Eco Labs on, and that was Kennedy from Shamba. And then after you, we're going to wrap it up with TR Price from Avano. But basin.live is made possible by the Climate Collective and brought to you by basin.global. And of course, we're here to celebrate the Gitcoin Climate Rounds, the alpha round for Gitcoin Climate. It's a new protocol that we're testing out. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Matthew to the show. And Matthew was here. He was in my very first circle with ReFi DAO when ReFi DAO got formed. So Matthew's been around kind of promoting and hustling and doing a lot with NFTs and artists. So thanks for coming.
You're welcome. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Okay, yeah, I was. So I'm hearing an echo.
I can turn on echo cancellation. Looks like it's you have it on. It sounds good to me.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. Okay, yeah, there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is yeah, I am still hearing an echo. So there's something I can turn off here. I've never used this platform before at all.
Yeah, do you have headphones maybe?
I don't. I don't have headphones that work with my Mac, no. So it works better with headphones?
Works better with headphones, but I'm hearing you fine. So I'm not sure if the audience is hearing you fine, but
okay,
so.
yeah, well, I can get by with hearing an echo of my life here. But yeah, I tuned in at the beginning, but on Safari with my Mac, it didn't work, so I had to go to Chrome. And you were able to see me once I was on Chrome.
Well, cool. Why don't you tell everyone what you've been up to? Your, what was it, 238-hour Twitter space?
Yeah, I became a Twitter head last year. I started out with ReFi last year. In like the middle of February, I went down to Montenegro and I was on some of the ReFi spaces, came back, and I got addicted to the NFT art space. And yeah, I've been joining ReFi spaces as well. Now what I've been trying to do is actually working with is finding artists who are more heart-centered. And actually I've been inviting them into ReFi spaces, and a lot of them were joining ReFi spaces. And so I'm looking at using artists to help create awareness and help raise funds. So if a ReFi project is going to do a drop or something, then I already know a bunch of artists who would apply. My goal is to find artists, whether you're going to save puppy dogs or plant trees or pick up plastic out of the ocean, whatever, have somebody who really cares about that issue. Because then it's like a double way, because if you care about the ocean and you're an artist and we use your art, then everybody that's into that cause, they might like you, they might buy your art, be friends with you. So it can be a win-win situation. So, I've been around the environmental movement a lot for 30 years now, 22 years of it full-time as a self-funded researcher, promoter. So I'm pretty much a computer head, and I've been to a lot of conferences and seminars. I actually went to the Clinton Global Initiative, Hemp Fest, Farm Aid, and I talk with global warming climate scientists and stuff like that. I studied global warming climate change for 22 years. The last 5 years, I added crypto quite a bit. So I've been in crypto since October 2017. I invested a lot of money, and I invested in the better projects like ADA and Holochain and Telos, low energy blockchain, stuff like that. So yeah, now I'm known for buying art and hosting long Twitter spaces. I've already done like 4 24-hour days this year, so I want to get more balance and stuff. But I'm really excited about what's happening with Web3 and the ReFi. I hear a lot of youth in the 20 to 30s. Of course, there's older people that are getting in there. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to fund the solutions at the exponential rate that we need to. And so I'm really big on how do we tokenize a lot of these things to reward people for planting trees, picking up plastic, and beach cleanups, creating permaculture projects and stuff like that. So I am more optimistic right now. I mean, obviously we had the virus and we have the war, so it's not like we're out of the woods yet. But I really, well, and as an activist, I learned that the best way to change the world, one, change yourself. Two is to do local actions. So I've been connecting with artisans because then they can help find out what is the best NGO or not-for-profit in their area that's planting trees or whatever. So for me, that's a better way to find out about good projects versus somebody flying there and trying to meet people. I mean, it takes time, energy, and airplane gas and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm really excited about doing that, and I'm really big with Africa. Educating girls is a big thing that I'm working with. So creating free sanitation in Uganda, I'm supporting that with my adopted daughter Rachel, because Project Drawdown said that educating girls was a top 6 solution for our planet. So I'm really big supporter of that. And regenerative farming, I'm a huge fan. I grew up in Iowa, so my father was a farmer until he went to college to become a teacher and then a businessman. So yeah, there's some pet projects that I have, educating girls. I'm a big ocean fan as well. So I'm excited to hear that there's a plan to get 90% of the plastic out of the ocean by 2050. So I've been following the ocean cleanup guy, that little boy that created something. Now he's gotten older, but so yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I love the heart-centered approach to, I think artists sometimes, I mean, I think we all are artists, right? But like, I think artists who classify themselves as like, I draw, I paint, I design on a computer, I'm a musician, they sometimes don't know how to connect to like the science or the business aspect or a project or the real world impact. So I think that's cool that you're putting together like a pool of artists, right, who could actually do, right, so that the artists can get supported, and the actual project, the real climate project, the nature project, can get supported as well.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I've been working on is creating a network. And I don't want to recreate the wheel. I don't think that there's that network out there yet. But like, if you wanted to find a refi project in your city, your state, your province, your country, or your continent, wouldn't it be nice if you could go to one place and do a search? So I know that there's directories here and directories there and directories there, but I've been really for years thinking of creating a big, massive network that we all can contribute to, keep it updated, of vetted projects. Because to me, the more we can vet projects and have low energy blockchains, with satellite imagery or, photo proof or whatever, because the NGO system, we know there's some waste, and some of them literally, 50% goes to salaries and overhead and stuff like that. So for me, I want to support the best of the best that's, using most of the money to actually plant the trees or to, support the regenerative farm. So.
And you're calling from Serbia today, right? Or this evening?
Yes, I've been in Serbia for over 6 years now. And
how'd you end up there?
I met a woman on Facebook, and she was born in Austria. So I thought she was in Austria, but she was in Serbia. I was like, oh, Serbia, what's that? Old Yugoslavia? Oh, okay. Anyway, my father passed away. I came over here. I was injured. It was cheaper to live here. So I was with her for 2 years, but now I've been single here in Serbia for 4 years. And I'm actually creating a regenerative hub here. I live in the edge of a forest. It's a little monastery village, and there's farmland right above me. So the bigger plan is to buy a farm, do regenerative farming, and really work with it. Because they've got pretty good soil here, but I do understand that they do, some of the farmers spray and stuff. I'm not a total expert on what they're doing. But yeah, I'm a big fan of no-till, no spray, and going from commercial to regen within a 2-3 year period where you're not tilling and you're not spraying.
Cool. I'm just visiting your YouTube channel. I remember seeing some videos from a really long time ago that you had posted. you've literally been posting on YouTube for, like, some of these are 16 years old.
Yeah, I did a test. I was creating a film company to do PSAs and do documentaries. But back then I had fear of big government, big religion, and big business. Now here we are, 22, 23 years later, as far as when I got active full time. And now we don't have time to waste. And, we've got to do as much as we can. And I really believe that we got to transition the old into the new. And obviously tokenizing and or valuing nature at its full value. I mean, what is that healthy Brazil Amazon worth? The lungs of the earth, and what is that clean stream, water, river, ocean worth? I don't think enough people really understand our pollution is, and like the plastic pollution. Oh my God, I was telling people about the garbage patch in the Pacific for a long time. So now I believe we're at the precipice. We're at the tipping point. What we do in the next 1 to 3 years to at least turn our ship around. And I really am a lot more optimistic because of Web3, because of the connectivity, and now Twitter Spaces, we're able to talk with each other. And so, yeah, I've got artist friends all over the world now. And I know a lot of them will donate their time, their energy, their money. And even to the foundation that we're creating, I've had top professionals say, yes, we will donate art to help fund the foundation. So I want to work half of my time on the not-for-profit world and then half on the refi world in tokenizing. So, investing in like 3D printers or circular economies, hemp farms, regenerative farming, it makes sense, like Dubai and Alaska and stuff like that. So I definitely do have some questions about how best to tokenize. So I'm thinking of creating my token either out of like Portugal, possibly Dubai, or Isle of Man or something like that. But I'm getting ready to broach that subject. But yeah, I really want to find out more about what you've done so we can talk at another time, because you're kind of like tokenizing land there in America.
What we're trying to do is create an incentive mechanism using traditional real estate investment mechanisms to fund land restoration and land conservation. So instead of trying to get people to invest in restoration or conservation directly, structuring the deals so that we call it agnostic and indifferent capital. So you don't have to care about climate or nature or biodiversity. You could just be a real estate investor who wants to invest in real estate that produces a certain yield and provides low enough risk, hands-off management. So basically structuring deals to do that. And we feel like blockchain and crypto and these different tools that we're using to create the treasury, or Klima had the protocol owned liquidity. Like, we view it as like the trust that we've set up is protocol owned property, basically, of like, how can we steward ecosystem services in perpetuity for all living beings, living and non-living beings, and how do we govern that so it's not just one group of people or the high net worth investors, basically governing and controlling that. So we kind of have two different things. We have like a product offering for high net worth investors and institutional investors, but then how is the use of the ecosystem services governed using Web3? And so it's not just I call it a land grab, Matthew, of like just high net worth, just that's the next, carbon's the next big thing, or biodiversity is the next big thing, natural capital next big thing. How is it just not more of the same old? So that, like, our focus on tokenize or Web3 is more on the governance side, but then also the shared value of there's going to be financial value created in all this. And so how do we balance those things, like individual investors, institutional investors, but also collective, commons type management practices, and doing it for the long term. So it's something that's going to outlive you and I, something that's going to outlive our kids, and to me, blockchain is the perfect solution for that.
Now, did America do something to the DAOs? Is like they're not going to let DAOs be legal or something? I thought I heard something about that.
They're just, as far as I can tell, what's happening is that they're just testing I mean, they're going to prosecute people, I'm sure, but it's basically a test of like the liability laws of like, that's been one of my concerns about DAOs. And Magenta, who we had on earlier, she's done a lot of work around like legal protection of DAOs. Like technically in the US, if you're operating under basically like if you're not an unincorporated nonprofit association or have some sort of determined like ownership structure, you know, you're or like a limited liability company or a C corp or some sort of shell entity, like I could be liable for, you know, Joe's actions and Mary's actions, and so could you, even though you might not know Joe or Mary, but you know, and I know me. So like these legal entities, like a UNA or a cooperative, an LCA, cooperative association, are super important, or, you know, or an LLC, like the work we're doing with Tater DAO and Cougar DAO and Lex DAO. That's all legal engineering to basically prevent what's happening under, I can't remember the name of that, like, you know, that test, you know, they're a lawsuit that's happening right now, but that's what they're going to prove out, is that basically the members of a DAO are liable for someone else's actions.
Okay.
Just because they were loosely associated with them.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of my biggest passions is to take the big farms like in Iowa and stuff like that and transition and break them up over time, make them smaller, more regenerative, you know, crop rotations, and, you know, having the experts. I mean, actually the whole network that I'm creating is having experts lead the way versus corporatism, where the corporations own the media and control the governments, you know. So it's a bottom up approach. And, you know, we've got a good start. I think over the next 18 months to 3 years, refi and low energy blockchain is going to capture the imagination of the world, and people will be able to buy in as little as $1 or whatever into different things. And so we can get the average person buying in and then actually earning money as well. So, and we got to get the big boys in. We got to transition the fiat world as well. Whether we're going to make it or not, who knows? But I'm going to do all I can while I'm alive to push that forward.
Cool. Well, with your interest in farms, I'm not sure if you've seen Cougar DAO. I'll drop it in the chat here, but we just tokenized a farm in Colorado, Eastern Colorado. We did the capital formation and the LLC formation as a DAO. I think we're on mainnet actually. So, you know, we have a token that's basically an LLC share, and your shares are the private placement interest in the LLC that owns the farm. So like that model could, you know, you could totally use that in Iowa or anywhere. You know, it's basically tokenized real estate is what we're innovating over there, like kind of in normal, you know, real estate world, to like bring over to refi and regenerative finance. We're kind of working the kinks out. You know, those friends that I'm building with over there are more focused on just like the law and the real estate aspect, more so than the climate and the carbon and the biodiversity. So, but my thesis and you know, Basin, we think that like if we can get that stuff worked out there, then it will be easier to do some of this harder stuff over here.
Yeah, and you know, I joined, you know, like ClimaDAO and Toucan and, you know, several different carbon type things last year. I'm not the total expert because I was more biased towards the artists, to bring them into our world, bring in more people. But yeah, I know like in Australia, there's a guy who I've talked with one-on-one that's doing like big regenerative farming plan over there and planting trees and stuff as well.
Well, cool. I just tagged you on Twitter with, have you seen Jimmy Cohen in the?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've co-hosted.
Okay.
I've co-hosted with Jimmy probably 30,
Okay.
40 times. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I figured you have, but when
he did a 50-hour space, I was awake for 44 out of those 50 hours on his space. So yeah, do not try this at home. Do not be a space cadet like me. No.
So where can people, like, where's the best way, Matthew, for people to connect with like the artist and the network that you're building?
Well, yeah, on Twitter, you know, so I have Twitter spaces, and I literally mean this. he's got a refi project, I want you guys to come present, whether you want to do a 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minutes, or talk longer, because my goal is to have the average person or the artist with heart understand your projects, because then they can follow you, maybe donate art or collaborate. Because I spent most of my life around activists and global warming type people, and then I was in the refi spaces, but I wanted to get the refi people talking to other people versus just talking to each other. Because we need to transition trillions of dollars this decade, and so it's going to take a lot of networks and protocols and DAOs and stuff to work with millions of people and trillions of dollars.
And that's I mentioned it further, earlier on in the session, but we're live streaming to LinkedIn right now and to YouTube, and that's the goal of some of these sessions. Is these are going to be recorded and put on podcasts and put in the kind of normal, like instead of us just talking to ourselves, right? In the
Right.
The refi spaces, that's what I found. We're just the Telegram groups I'm part of. I'm just talking to the same people, so it's like.
Right.
We want to like broaden the reach and expand. There's going to be a lot of synergy, I think, between what we're building in refi and Web3 and what's happening over even in World Economic Forum and some of the UN programs.
Yeah, I've upped my LinkedIn. I'm connecting with more of my alumni from Arizona State University. They do have a global sustainability aspect of ASU. I think they got it a year or so after I graduated from ASU. So my goal is to work with. I only had like 300 followers. I didn't need a job, so I don't have all my full information on LinkedIn, but I am upping it to connect with more people. I've got my YouTube live now. I can start doing those because I have over 1,000 subscribers. So yeah, I want to utilize Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all these things to communicate. And actually, this is one of the keys I forgot to mention. We're going to be working with communicators, and artists are obviously communicators, so they can write a poem or a song or a story about global warming or climate change or solutions or how do we transition our world. You can do an art piece about that. So yeah, just trying to onboard more people to understand that, hey, we can actually create win-win-win solutions, lower our pollution, create a more stable economy, and an economy where more people win. Because if you understand, 99% of us are not in the 1%. So technically, we should all come together more and support each other versus big corporations that are just in it for the bottom line and in the money, and they don't care if they're using slave labor or keeping the money outside of America. It's not being taxed or they're polluting. So we've got our work cut out. But there's people like you and the people on this call and the people in refi. So the refi movement on Twitter has really given me a lot of motivation that we're headed in the right direction, and I think we're going to see a lot of fruit in the next 18 months to 3 years, and work out a lot of these kinks and get some of the regulations and laws in our favor. Because if we don't, it's just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's why I'm still here in refi and believe that the tools are going to be there. As the big venture capitalist here in Colorado, Brad Feld, yesterday, basically, the title of the post was "I don't hate crypto," so it wasn't like an endorsement of crypto, but he basically had been, against it, right, or not really for it, and think it's too volatile and it's scammy and whatnot, which I agree with in certain aspects, but like. He compared it to 1999 of the internet. That basically everything we do in the future is going to be underlined by the Web3 technologies and the blockchain technologies that we're building over here in refi. So it gives me hope when you see communication like that.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Yeah, I'm excited what we're doing with refi. So I appreciate all that you did to get it jump started and everybody on this call and stuff. So, but yeah, we definitely got to onboard more people and educate them. And yeah, I only focus on a very small number of cryptos right now. Yeah, so cool.
Well, cool. I'll have to join one of your and Jimmy's spaces at some point. I was on one of those Mr. Beast spaces
Yeah,
there
he
at
wants
one
to get
point.
Mr.
Yeah.
Beast to plant like 83 million trees and stuff like that.
Cool, cool. Well, thanks for coming. I don't see TR here yet, but I might take just a break for a minute. We've been at this for 2 hours, and we'll see where TR is from Ivano. But yeah, for those listening, watching, what might be viewing the recording or watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, check out Matthew's MLB in WA, so MLB in Washington, right? I assume that's what that stands for.
Yeah, I was in Washington State when I created the film company, and I created a not-for-profit called Shifting Solutions. So I've been in since the 90s. I've really said, hey, we've got to do things differently. And I was one of the guys saying the sky is falling and shit. So I've really learned, how do we communicate to people in a way that works for them? So if we're going to market to the far left, we say these words. If we're going to market to the far right, we say these words. And that's where communications and experts and art and trying to figure out, how do we reach these people? But if you talk to them in their ways and listen to them, we can do that. Because you can create a solar farm cheaper than you can a coal factory in some of these countries right now. It's cheaper, but a lot of people don't know that yet. So yeah, I appreciate your time, and I don't know how I drop down from here or not.
There should be probably a button, or maybe I can do it here. But I think what you just said, the languaging, right, the messaging or the communicating, like that's what we've not necessarily struggled with in Basin, but it's like, oh, it's very evident that we could create 3 or 5 different like communication kind of hubs or platforms because the language is different, or the target audience is different, or their perspective, their back, if they're philanthropy, they talk one way, right, or they understand things a certain way. If they're venture capital or if they're institutional investors, it's very different
So that's
language.
literally what I want to do. So like, you or any refi project out there could come to our network once we're set up, and I'm going to the next level now. And it's not about money. So if you need marketing advice or copywriting or how to target certain people in words that will work for them, that's what I want to do. So we've got people with master's degrees, PhDs, and scientists that are going to work with us to do this. So there is a not-for-profit aspect where if you're a good project, doesn't matter if you have money to pay us, we'll do it for free. Because we want to get the messages out there in the best way so that we can get as much action going as fast as we can.
Cool. I'm sure you've seen Ellie Young on Twitter. Have you
Oh
talked
yeah,
to her
yeah,
directly?
a
Yeah.
lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So it seems similar. So that's good. Cool. Well, Matthew, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. I'm gonna take a short break and see where TR is, but yeah, thanks and keep up the good
Awesome.
work.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. All right, so I think TR is having time zone issues. He is in New Zealand, but I think we'll wrap for that today. Appreciate everyone's time. Magenta from Bloom Network, Seb from Eco Labs, Kennedy from Shamba, and Matthew, who's doing a bunch of refi NFT work and community building, communicating work. So thanks for tuning in, watching. Please make sure to check out the Climate Collective, climatecollective.org. Also, you can get your own Basin token at beta.basin.global. It's just kind of the entry point to what we're doing for land restoration, land conservation, using real estate fundamentals. And also special thanks to Gitcoin for making all this possible with the Gitcoin Climate Grant rounds. So keep up the good work out there, and appreciate everyone tuning in and whatnot. And we'll see you soon.